Hi, I'm Melissa Shepard Williams, and I invite you to reflect on this pandemic year and how it's transformed our lives. It set the tone for the creation of this platform named Transforming the World Through Reflections. In it were many dynamic professionals meeting every month so that we could think out loud together about how to move through this experience. We supported each other through grief and through the creation of new ways of navigating life. Just connecting, we needed it. And we hope that the community listening to us felt supported, felt like they're not alone. That was our greatest hope. And so while we commemorate 1 year of this podcast, we also celebrate that we survived, that we were there for each other, and that we are creating together more and better ways of sustaining health on the other side of the pandemic. May this year of crisis be one of the most important invitations to go deeply into our healing, individually and collectively, so that we amplify our gifts and transform this world. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us again today for what we have called for now a year, Transforming the World Through Reflections. Who knew that we would have these months of growth, reflection, challenges, and we've been here for each other on screen and in many other ways, thankfully, trying to build community as best as we can. And this podcast was an unexpected one, with the whole intention of just supporting each other through this process. And here we are, a year later, still together. And I'm so thankful for all of you who've tuned in to listen to our conversations, and also to all of you on screen today who've accompanied me. We've accompanied each other throughout this year of global crisis. And so I thank you infinitely for all that you've shared. I am going to begin by introducing all of you and myself to our community listening. My name's Melissa Shepard Williams, and now I'm going to go around the room introducing everyone here. I have here my dear Anaida Colón Muñiz, professor and representing Boricua. Yes, Puerto Rico in the house. We have also my dear Tiffany Griffin. Yes, I see that flag. Tiffany is an artist, I mean, in so many ways, to the full extent of that word. Writer, performer, oh my goodness, the list is endless. I'm so thankful that you're here, Tiffany, to share your perspective. Mwah. And I have a lovely, lovely colleague here, William Haddad, psychotherapist, also an artist. And so we've had such great conversations about where those two forms of art intersect. Thank you for being here, William. Another colleague, Makisha Lawrence. Dr. Lawrence, we've walked a long road together in this therapy world. And I'm so thankful you've joined us in these podcasts. I have another colleague here, Ebony Williams, beautiful psychotherapist and also faculty at Pacific Oaks College. Thank you so much for being here, Ebony. And Sherry Johnson. I mean, this is a room full of therapists. Another therapist, also from Pacific Oaks College community. Let's shift to more artists, other versions of artistry. Kay Benjamin, an amazing actor and writer. So thankful that you're here with us.
Thank you.
And Dairén Santa Maria, music in the house. The violin sings through her. Oh my goodness. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Another artist that we love and adore, Oscar Hernandez. Listen, the salsa village adores you. The jazz village adores you. The danzón village adores you. Oh my goodness. I'm so glad that you're here. And we have another artist, Tamika White, actor, and such a beautiful encourager of our communities through the arts. And Jake Ross, what a community mover and shaker. He is a director at the Department of Public and Social Services, and definitely someone committed to supporting the community in a wide range of ways. So I was saying we have a room full of delicious people. Let's jump into this conversation. So Tife, please start us off. What are your reflections, the ones that stand out the most for you about this experience of the pandemic?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I guess the biggest takeaway, if you will, is that the world was able to experience what I've always known and what I've always experienced as a writer, as I call myself a multi-hyphenated creative. I spend an inordinate amount of time in my create space, in my workspace at home. It is my safe place. It is my happy place. And there was something unifying amongst my community, my personal and work community, in knowing that they were experiencing perhaps for the first time what I've experienced for decades. And hopefully I was able to, in my own way, encourage them in it, especially those who found it stressful and found it, felt like they were so cloistered and so locked down, and people had stresses behind it. And so I was able to help a few people through it, to help them use this time to explore some avenues that perhaps you wouldn't have had time to explore. Like we all know the stories of people baking bread for the first time. But for some people, it was the first time they picked up a paintbrush. It was the first time they picked up an instrument, or started doing private karaoke and trying their hand at singing. So for me, the pandemic, while it was devastating and while we lost loved ones, which was very hard and still is very hard, there were and there are and have been some wonderful takeaways from this time, from my vantage point. I know not everyone will feel the same, but it's like anything in life. There is a yin and the yang to it. There is a good and there's a bad. There's always a pro and a con. And so I was able to extract from it as much of the pros of being on lockdown, being quarantined as possible, and hopefully again pass that along to others.
Thank you. What a year of firsts. Yes. William, what are you?
May I also add that my faith was the other thing that for those days. Now, I want to make sure I don't make it sound like I was lovely jubbly over here and happy every day and just tripping through my creative world. And, there were days that had to scream in Mimi's and I needed to get out of here and couldn't go, and there was no place to go and couldn't
Right.
go. And, I
Right.
had those moments like everybody else, but it was
Mhm.
my
Mm.
faith in God that really kept me steady.
Yeah. Oh, we all reflected so much on what was grounding. And I'm so thankful that your faith supported you through this. Yes. William, what are your thoughts?
First off, thank you so much for having me here again. It's always a joy, always a pleasure. For my part, I think that the pandemic impressed upon me the significance of quote unquote the little things in our day to day. It taught me, for one, that when something happens on a scale, on a scope as vast and as all-encompassingly stressful and upending to our daily norms and rituals as the pandemic, when so much of what we assume or take for granted is just cast, to the side, you find new significance and newfound emphasis on the small things that give you comfort or give you a sense of stability in your day. And for me, that was really what kept me going. As a therapist, it was very, very hard to, bring that air of understanding and empathy and stabilization to every session that I held throughout the worst of the pandemic.
Yes.
And so in order to, keep my own self-care going, keep my own perspective on par with what was required for my patients, that was really where I took the most strength from, was finding new pleasure and significance, however mundane or trivial, going for a walk in the afternoon, talking to my folks on the phone in the evening, making clam chowder with a little extra butter inside, however trivial, you take pleasure where you. And the other thing I'll add too is that as as the vaccine count starts to rise, as numbers, at least in the US, start to dwindle, and we're able to, return in some form to some of the things we used to do, I think we also find or can find new pleasure and joy, or new appreciation rather, for things that we might not have thought about as much prior to the pandemic as well.
Yeah.
The example that I'm thinking of is the other weekend I went to visit my parents, and my mom, opened up the door and said, "Hello, come in, son. Good to see you." And I was like, I can just say, "Don't mind if I do." Yeah, it was a wonderful moment of, come on in. Won't you come in? We don't have to talk masks 6 feet apart outside for once when you're having a visit. So things like that, which really give you a sense of beauty and understanding, joy in the small.
Oh, yes. Such a longing for those things that we were able to do so freely. We need touch. We need touch. All these little things that we are now appreciating in a new way. Yeah, for sure. And, life as a clinician has been quite a challenge. So I can appreciate what you were saying. Yeah. Oh, like Tife saying, joy in the small things. Yes. 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 Sherry, what are your thoughts on this? We've had so many private conversations about the challenges of being a clinician through this pandemic.
Maybe even to amplify what William said is, this has been a very challenging year, and I have gotten so many clients due to the stressors of COVID, right? And it's been very, I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to hold space for folks, and also recognizing the importance of me taking care of myself in order, not even just in order for that, but especially in order for be present for my clients, right?
Yes.
And it's been tremendous to see what progress has come for each individual client, right?
Yes.
And I stress a lot something William kind of said too, on the line of that, saying like I always talk about what has been going well, and big or small, and small doesn't mean insignificant, right? So
Yes.
I would say like let's talk about that, let's amplify that, right?
Yes.
As we hold space for what is still challenging, what is going well, what is helping shift us thinking differently, operate differently, especially during this time.
Yes.
And even just personally, if you amplify something that Tife mentioned, like my spiritual work, being connected with my ancestors has been tremendous in order to assist me to take care of myself and then be present for others.
Yes.
And when I felt comfortable to get out in the natural world, being able to take those walks, maybe you put just up and down the street, right, or early in the morning, and seeing like the squirrels just being joyful, and seeing the beautiful flowers, things I would have driven past in my car
Yes.
on my way to work. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this has been here this whole time. Like, just the joyousness of being able to take in those moments. So I have gratitude for being able to slow down this year, to be able to take in some of these things that were kind of off my radar, right? So focused on, I gotta get here. What about this paperwork? I gotta get this done. How I know I'm speaking from a place of privilege where I had the ability to slow down and take in these moments, right? But I'm also grateful that I was able to and take advantage of that. So those are my thoughts of this year.
Yeah, so many things, and it's so layered. And I am thankful to hear you share about how important it was and always is to invite someone whose healing journey we're supporting to reflect on what's going well, and build from there. And I can relate to all that slowing down as well, with being able to go for more walks, and nature was celebrating that the humans were inside. Oh my gosh. Well, before we move forward, I want to welcome someone that I love so dearly, Pastor Kelvin Sauls. I am so thankful that you're here with us today. Throughout this pandemic, both in private conversations as well as through his podcasts and his participation in this one where, he joined on a day that we focused on the role of spirituality to move through crisis. I'm so thankful that you're here, Pastor Sauls. We're now, reflecting on, what stood out for us through this pandemic, and that we have chatted about in this unexpected podcast. Pastor Sauls, jump in and share with us what has stood out for you in this journey that we've been experiencing.
Well, good day, everybody. It is so good to see you, and just glad to be in the midst of this circle of wisdom and TLC. There you go.
Yes,
TLC.
yes.
Just appreciate it and glad to be with you. Yes, I mean, first of all, thanks for the invitation to be part of the episode around spirituality. That was just a great experience with my brother and colleague from Panama,
Yes.
who was so persistent, because we had technical issues.
Yes.
But he kept calling back, and he was right there. I was just so encouraged by that and all that. But yes, a very tumultuous year, a very dangerous year in so many ways, a very difficult year, dynamic year, but also a year, I think, filled with so much opportunity for listening, right? Learning, and I think most of all leveraging. And I think that's kind of sums up for me, you know, what this year was about. I think, you know, however painful it was also very meaningful for me in so many ways, because it just really invited us all into a pause that the RSVP for, right? You know, it was almost like a forced pause, if you will.
Yes.
And you're right, I mean, nature rejoiced when we, you know, had to go into quarantine, you know, and now they are terrified because we're coming back out. Lord have mercy, right? So everything crazy is up, you know.
Yes.
And I know the animal kingdom and earth itself, they're having council meetings everywhere saying, oh my goodness, y'all prepare, okay?
Yes.
Don't stay out too late, you know, just because if you encounter human, they're out, they back, you know. Right? But you know, one of the learnings for me was just, you know, this pandemic in so many ways has revealed so many epidemics, right,
Yes.
that took place or that was going on that we have just normalized. We've just kind of, it's just been rolling under the radar. And we've just accepted it almost, you know. And so it has just really, you know, uncovered, unleashed, if you will, you know, just so many structural challenges, you know, in terms of policies and politics that has been just anti-Black on an ongoing basis. And I'm talking globally now,
Yes.
because whether I was speaking with folk in Panama or in South Africa or in Namibia, you know, or in Ghana, this pandemic adversely affect, you know, Black folk like never before. You see, in terms of that, it was just amazing from South LA to South Africa, you
Yeah.
know, and to, you know, from suburbia, you know, to the indigenous peoples, you know, in Namibia, the Khoisan people, you know, who this pandemic pushed almost onto the brink of starvation, right? You know, around it. So structurally, it has been very revelatory. And of course, then in May, you know, that catalytic, painful, you know, catalytic event that took place in terms of the public lynching, right, of George Floyd. You see, that for me just really communicated, as Reverend L. Sharpton said in his eulogy, you know, how the knee of imperialism, you know, racial capitalism continues to be on the neck of Black folk all around the world.
All around the world.
So people could march everywhere around that because they knew, you know, what happened. So so structurally, you know, I think, you know, personally for me, it really just helped me, you know, really do some introspection around, you know, how I do what I do, and reflection on what I've been called to do. You know, it gave me a new perspective on self-care, right? And that's why I keep saying self-care is the best care. You know, enabled me to really, you know, reflect on, you know, how I need to continue to pursue alignment as well as fulfillment in what I do, you know, around this. work. So personally, it's been very, very, powerful. Spiritually, it's been, awesome, because while quarantined, now we were able to connect, with so many different, experiences for spiritual growth, and so that's just been great.
Yes.
Folks have now seen how you can connect with the divine in so many different ways. There is just not one way, and I was just ecstatic about that, because it really challenged people who were worshiping the building, right? Instead of, God or the divine or the creator. You see what I'm saying? Now we were pushed to figure out a way to look for a holy touch through, through high tech, right? And so many folk had to get with the program. Otherwise, you would have really chosen to be left behind. I mean, there was no choice. It's not, well, will you join? Can you please? No, if you ain't gonna join, you out. I mean, that was just it. I mean, when I went to church, I would take a survey and then have a meeting, and then no. The last 12 plus months, it was like, you know what? You need to get with it, or you're out. The train is leaving the station with or without you. And it was great to just see how so many people tapped in, on that. And I don't think that, we're done getting to know and understand the impact of, all the layers of COVID-19. But one thing is for sure, we can't go back to normal anymore.
Right.
Because we have these preconditions around COVID-19 that were structurally, socially, politically, spiritually, just so off kilter, as it relates to us, that to this whole thing about, can we just get back to normal? Can we just, we can't go back to normal. And I hope that we can have the courage to reimagine a new normal of a more healthier, a more just, a more equitable, and a more thriving, more thriving families, communities, countries, and continents. I mean, that's what I'm looking forward to. What the fight is going to be, and that fight starts with how we allow ourselves to be liberated and free, from whatever it is, mentally, emotionally, socially, that's been, holding us down and holding us back, and thinking and giving us the illusion that it's okay to normalize our abuse, our pain, our struggle, our, whatever it is that we have to, whatever we have to deal with. So, so looking forward to see, what's next, and not just to see what's next, but to participate in creating what should be next.
Yes, thank you for your words. And you've touched on so many of the things that were reflected on throughout these episodes of this podcast, which began as a way of, supporting each other and examining the intersection between the pandemic and social injustice affecting us all, not only locally, but globally. And so we went very deeply into that. And I'm thankful for it, and for your role in helping us think out loud about how introspection has been prompted in this pandemic. And for many people, a sense of spirituality has been strengthened. And so, it's setting the tone for us to reimagine life moving forward, recognizing that what was problematic before the pandemic continues to be, and is even more so, and we can play a role in transforming that. Hence the name Transforming the World. Thank you so much for that. I would like to invite Anaida to join in sharing. Anaida was with me on the very first episode, which happened in Spanish, and the following week in English, the same group. And that's what made it so that the podcast exists both in English and in Spanish. We tried to have every week the equivalent conversation in the other language. And so Anaida joined us with her wisdom on, those disparities you were talking about, Pastor Sauls, but in the world of education. And so Anaida, please share with us what's happened for you since then.
Well, hello everybody, and thank you for having me join you. I think it's been mentioned before, and for sure, nature said, stop, halt everything. And as reflection in a mirror, we need to take a look at ourselves. And that was very, very clear, and for a lot more than a quarantine period, that we think of typical. We thought, oh, this will be over in a couple months, but no, that was not enough, because this this pandemic allowed us to not only halt and take a look at ourselves and the inequities that exist in our society, the digital divide, the society that we live in around the world, where there are these blatant inequities, poverty and racism and sexism, all that just seemed to be so much more obvious, because everybody stopped and had to take a look. And, we were able to be online, we were able to be on TV and even see things that maybe if we were out and about, we wouldn't notice. So certainly, as the Reverend mentioned, nature was happy. And as you mentioned, Melissa, nature was happy, because I was watching the birds. They were having a blast, right outside my window. They were having babies and having a great time. The water, the fish were coming back because those big ships were now polluting everything. I mean, there's just so many things that happened. As Paulo Freire says, untested feasibility, the silver lining, the things that could happen if we allow them to, in positive ways, to make the world a better place. The things we were doing to nature, the harm, once humans were out of the picture, nature took over and was able to flourish. But we had a lot of lessons learned this year. I just hope that we remember, because sometimes we forget. I think it's been really important to have that long year, because the longer it is, the more we can remember. In education, as well as in all fields, there are so many things that were learned about our resilience, our children's resilience, the teachers, the ability to learn in different modes, hard as it was, to be able to have our creativity come to the forefront on how we can take kids who are in kindergarten for the first time, learning in a classroom, do it virtually. Very challenging for teachers, but it was done. And for parents to see that learning happen, even though it was very challenging for the parents and other caretakers, the fact that they could see what their kids were doing every day was an amazing thing. Also, the fact that teachers could take a peek into the lives of children at home was an amazing thing. To be able to see the diversity of the homes, what's going on in those homes, and the kinds of relationships that our children are in. Those were amazing lessons. I don't think those will be easily forgotten by those educators. And so there were so many ways that we could learn about ourselves. We can see who we really are, what we are capable of, how creative we can be,
Mhm.
how we can survive under dire circumstances.
Oh, yes.
So much learned, and also to look at the world as ourselves and to see what's going on in other parts. And again, the privileges we have and the inequities that exist, and how we can create a more balanced, equitable and humane world. There's the potential for that. And so I hope that we don't forget. I'm hopeful that, these lessons will last, and that we can continue to build for more equity and more health and more not, the gaps are so great in every area, in health, in wealth, in so many, in technology. I'm hoping that this allows for more of a balance in the world, so that people can have a fair chance at, having a happy life.
Agreed. Agreed. Thank you so much for your words. May we remember, may we remember what reflections emerge through this process, so that we recognize what we have inside that will serve a new vision of our communities. I'm with you. I'm with you. And the resilience that we've discovered that we have in this process. I want to invite more of the artists in this group to share about the healing power of the arts. We could not have moved through this pandemic without the arts. It simply is not possible. I have a bias, I will admit, that learning about pain and healing cannot be done without the arts. It simply cannot be done. I wanna invite Oscar to jump in. We had a beautiful conversation on the day of our podcast episode about the arts sustaining life. We even danced during the conversation, a little salsa moment. And I want to say, I'm thankful, Oscar and other musicians in this group, for your music. Music is medicine. And last night we had a chance to get another taste of Oscar's medicinal music when we were watching In the Heights. Oh, wow. I'm still reeling from watching this, because it spoke to my heart and the heart of the group of us watching the movie, where we saw so much of ourselves in not only our lives in our countries of origin, but what it's like to come to this country, the US, and recreate community. And music is such a central part of this. So we're gonna move from one Boricua, Anaida, to another Boricua. Oscar, jump in.
Gracias, Melissa. Thank you, Melissa, and thank you for inviting me. And thank you to exposing me to a room of beautiful and positive people. So I salute you all, and thank you for letting me share a little time with you. And it's a beautiful forum. It's a beautiful example of, what we have to offer in terms of our perspective with this incredible, time that we've been going through. But I think I speak for everybody when I say, first and foremost, our hearts go out to the people who've been personally affected, people who have had people who've died or gone through serious illness through COVID. So I think that's the first thing that we have to acknowledge. And I personally wasn't affected in that light, thank God. But I certainly could relate to the people who've gone through that, experience, which has got to be, so awful, and brings into perspective how awful this pandemic is, for sure.
Yeah.
But in terms of me, if you had told me 6 months prior to the pandemic that I'd be collecting unemployment, I would have said you're crazy, something I've never done in my life.
Right.
But I was fortunate to, because I saw all my work in February. I saw my dates, my concert tours. I had a concert tour in Europe, just come off the board, and my opportunity to earn a living and be able to, take care of the comforts of what I need to be able to move forward in my life disappearing. So I had no recourse but to, apply for unemployment, and I collected, as most musicians, not most musicians, some musicians, it was a huge positive thing for me. But yeah, so that was a, slap in the face in terms of reality about the pandemic for me. But I think that I made to not stop being creative. I think it just affected me that way. I was a little angry at first in terms of like seeing my dates come off the board in terms of earnings, seeing how we were beginning to be affected by this situation that we had no control of.
Right.
And, I just said, what can I do? What can I do? But I realize now, and looking back, I just jumped in. And I got all these, I'm very fortunate and very blessed to know a lot of creative people, a lot of really super high achieving people in terms of music. And I called on them and said, jump on this bandwagon with me and let's keep creating, which is what I did. 2 weeks after the pandemic, I created my first virtual video. I reached out to musicians that I know. I said, hey, and they said, yeah, I could record from home. Musicians who have the ability to record from home, which is not something they always did, but now they're realizing this is something they had to do. And
Yes.
even musicians who had no clue how to do it were asking, how can I do this? What do I do? What do I need to buy? And everybody got on board with that aspect of how to record from home, including me. So I got a lot of people on board, and I started creating virtual videos of music that I was offering, as an example of the creative spirit being out there and tangible to the world, so the world could see. I didn't do it consciously. It's just something that I did. I reacted this way. And I got to tell you that it got to the point where I even produced my first record, long distance.
Amazing.
It's amazing.
Amazing.
I produced my first recording, all done long distance from New York to LA. I sent the tracks. I got it. And this was a vocalist that I know from New York. I'm living in LA, but he's in New York. And he said, I did the arrangements. I sent it to the musicians, song by song. We got it all back. And then finally, I heard the tracks. I went like, wow, it sounds amazing. It's just like I'm blown away, and for me to be blown away, I'm going like, Jesus. So then I had, when the pandemic was finally, when did I go? We're in March, I think in February. I finally went to New York. I had gotten my vaccinations, and I jumped on a plane, went to New York, did the vocals with him and background vocalists, and the project was complete. And it now sounds amazing. I can look back as to something I did during the pandemic that was like so incredibly creative. So I vow not to let it stop me, what I do. Obviously, we've all been affected by this. And again, it sucks that, we've had to, this thing forced upon us. And we certainly, I would be remiss if I didn't point out, the galvanizing politically of what happened,
Yes.
in this country, the last election and all the stuff that was happening before, that we were able to witness and be home to see, wait a minute, we need to be involved in this some, shape or form. And we need to have an opinion as to what's going on and galvanize ourselves and the people that we know in terms of saying, wait a minute. So it was kind of interesting seeing those aspects. And it amazes me how inhumane this world is sometimes.
Yes.
I'm going like, how could that be? I can't even fathom, people's mentality. Sometimes it's my own personal opinion, my humble opinion, but it bothers me that, this world and this country is not better than what it should be. What it needs to be, you know, this is the greatest country in the world, right? And you see so many shortcomings and so many failings. You know, I mean, LA is a case in point. How could you have all these people being homeless, living in tents?
Homeless.
That's just one example. Really, really, you know, that's not going to fly. We need to find a way to deal with the situations in a more intelligent and a more humane way and get to another place. Thank you for having me. That's what I'm going to say.
Thank you, Oscar. And you know, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about how so many people, no matter what their life's work is, have had to reinvent the way they do it. And so for you to be recording long distance, not only audio, but video, it's amazing. And, you know, for us therapists in this group, the experience of having therapy sessions on screen, while it was not something entirely new, before the pandemic, it existed. But to have it be the only way, oh my gosh, we really had to stretch too, to try to connect in ways that are meaningful with someone. So I think we all were stretched in many, many ways, and many unexpected ones.
And you know what, Melissa, the thing is what you're saying, and now it's here, and now we're comfortable with having that aspect of how we do things
Mm-hmm.
move in a way that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So it's an opportunity to be thankful and grateful
Yes.
in some way to these things that, you know, we didn't have before, we couldn't do before in this way, but it is a positive, right? So
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's something to build from.
That's true. I mean, crisis is always inviting us to see what we need to see. You know, on that note, I want to invite Makisha. Makisha, along with another clinician that was not able to join us today, participated in a conversation we had during an episode we dedicated to exploring the different faces of intergenerational racism.
Mm.
It's so connected to what you shared, Oscar, the idea that how is it possible that at this day and age, certain things are still going on? Well, the pandemic put a magnifying lens on things that remain the same for a reason: structural oppression. So Makisha, please jump in and let's give a tidbit of, you know, things we explored in that conversation.
Oh my goodness. Oh, there were so many things.
So many things.
I think I just kind of want to add to what some of the previous speakers have said about nature coming alive even more. I think one of my lessons has been that we are not separate, that we are also a part of nature. And we saw that when we were removed. We saw our effects on nature when we were removed from it for a while. And so I think that that's helpful for us to see and understand, because that can be a guidepost for us that we pay more attention to as we move forward. So that's kind of what I wanted to touch on, at least about the nature piece. In terms of the intergenerational racism, I think the pandemic was an uncovering. You and I talked about this before. It was an uncovering. And so there are many more things that are being seen, and there are many more things that are being willing to be seen.
Yes.
That's two different things. So we can have all the videos of all the things, all the injustices and racisms that have happened across the globe. We can have that depicted, but we also need to have eyes that are willing to bear witness to it. And I think that the pandemic encouraged that from a lot of people, and encouraged some introspection about how they may participate in racism, even unbeknownst to them. And I think the aspiration of America, as opposed to what America is, was also uncovered more.
Yes.
It's going to take years and years for us to, deprogram that. But we have to understand that aspirationally, it's not meeting the aspirations, and it never really has. But now we're actually having more people see that that's the case.
Yes. So true. The aspirational versus what actually is. And so much has been uncovered. I remember in several conversations we had over the episodes last year, being 2020, we talked over and over again about 2020 vision. 2020 vision of what's been generations of foolishness. And wow, those were some pretty intense conversations. We are now needing to address things. You cannot turn a blind eye. And for oppressed communities, we are learning more deeply about our history, which is essential to the healing process. On that note, I want to invite two people on this screen who were part of an episode dedicated to exploring how this pandemic addresses an issue of a film we participated in about depression in the African diaspora, Tamika White and Kay Benjamin. The name of the film is The Rhythm of Blue. And we talked about how this pandemic is really showing how so many people have been moving through life in survival mode because depression has been unattended for generations. So Tamika and Kay, please jump in with some thoughts about this that have come up for you.
You want to go first, Kay? Or you want to go?
I thank you for inviting me.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
So glad you're here.
I was really trying to, one of the things that I've been working on is being able to listen. And this pandemic, one of the things that I have found, number one, I learned something new every single day. It's like I'm a kid. Every day I'm learning something new. I've seen nature in as some people have already said, in a different way. One of the things, being so much by myself, I had gone through a crisis in the beginning of the pandemic and thought I was doing quite well, and then began to think, because of some things, is there such a thing as functional depression? And then a therapist put on Facebook, yes, there is. And soon after that, I think the tennis player came out about some challenges that she was having. And I thought about that. And because I wasn't really interacting with people, I missed that I was depressed. I said, because I considered if I wasn't suicidal, I'm good. That was my bar line. I'm like, really? That's your bar line? But what I realized, I in being by myself, and I'm a multiple, so that gave us an opportunity to work some things out. And I also found that life, or how I was brought up, or the world of it, that I had been very well trained to push my feelings down. And so we tried to open that up a little bit, but I saw with each trauma, and I'm very sensitive, it might not have been a trauma for anybody else, but it was a trauma for me. I could see where another personality would come out. And so when I got to the place, because a lot of people were talking about my story, I'm like, yeah, I have my story, but do I want it to be my story? Yes, I'm this way, but am I still choosing to be this way? And so, in order to kind of get a baseline, I said my goal was to align myself with God. And I used the positive 42 principles of Mayat to say every morning, and then I put them on my video so that that's the first thing I hear. Okay, so it's not the news, it's not the bad news, because also being an empath, all this stuff that was going on in Congress and made this, it was in my soul,
Yes.
you know?
Mm.
And so I was able to get to the place in aligning myself as I see with God. This is all I know at this point. I was able now to say that my feelings can come first.
Mm.
Other people's feelings do not, and what they think, we cut out the middleman. The relationship is really with me and God. Okay, so I'm allowed to feel my feelings, and that really, I'm not a split anymore. It's just been an amazing journey. So what happened this last year will only be a tragedy if we are not better people.
Mm.
That would be the tragedy.
There. Okay, those words.
That's awesome.
Oh, yes. We choose if it's a tragedy or not. Thank you for those words, Kay.
Thank you.
You know what, Melissa? I just have to say, just to hear functional depression, is that what you said, Kay?
Pardon me?
Is that what you said, functional depression?
Yeah, I thought I made it up, but apparently there is such a thing.
It is. It is.
That's pretty awesome just to hear, because I mean, I went through a real deep depression one time in my life, and I realized that, you know, even now, that's part of what, you know, I go through. And to hear it, you say it, it just resonates. And to hear what you said about how you got over it, it's a beautiful thing. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Isn't it amazing how when hearing something named, it makes a difference. Makisha, it reminds me of something I learned to think about because of your words. I learned to think about it in the way you put it. In our humanness, we are here to feel witness, to witness each other. So when Kay, you said those words, and Oscar, those words reached you that way, gosh, I feel like I was in the presence of that. We need to feel witnessed. And in this pandemic, we truly needed that. It wasn't optional. We needed that. Wow. Tamika.
Yes. Hey.
Hey.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. But that's Kay, beautiful queen. Yeah. It's gonna almost slightly echo the same thing, because I always know that I've been a functioning depressed. Because, but what in lieu of the pandemic, living with depression, what it allowed me to reflect on was exactly what Kay was saying. It took me very back to my childhood and revisiting that young girl, that young lady, that young adult. So it was very reflective in the literal sense, and it allowed me to not negotiate everything that I was feeling. I was always in constant negotiation with myself as a depression, as growing up, of like, oh no, you're not really. I feel something, but and I'm constantly having negotiated in the name of maybe family, in the name of school, because all of these rules, all of these things that we have to follow to function in the world, in society, because otherwise there'll be chaos, you'll be some crazy sycophant, you'll just be out of control, you'll be an angry Black woman, you'll do all these things that whatever somebody stigmatized you with, labeled you with. And I think I've worn every single one of those labels for someone else. I negotiated that contract for someone else. And I got tired of that. And that pandemic allowed me to just kind of sink all the way down only to rise back up. It allowed me to say, how am I not going to be angry about that? How am I not going to feel something about that? If I fall into the sunken place and I hear somewhere back in my head from family members, from my mom or my girl, ain't nothing wrong with you. Yeah, there is something wrong with you. You're hurting, you're in pain, you are this. Am I mad at God today? Because I have been mad at God several times. So and you're not supposed to go do that, especially growing up in the Black church, because that's blasphemy. I'm feeling all of it and I owned it. So what the pandemic allowed me to do in depression, instead of using the words, watching my language, I don't suffer from depression, I live with depression. I am a person that, and I'm not ashamed to actually say that, because we were so ashamed to say that. It's not supposed to happen. You're supposed to be a strong Black woman all the time, all day, every day, 24/7. I am tired of trying to hold up the mantra of being a strong Black woman. I am strong. And I'd like to think I'm a relatively educated woman, but like Kay said, I was learning something new about myself, other people, my environment, every day. And I took that as a gift. I took it as, even if I did the follow with, how come I didn't know that? Okay, you did, that's okay, you didn't know that. That's okay, you didn't know that. You know it now, and amen, hallelujah for that. So I was able to celebrate the fact that I am a functioning depressant in this world. My creativity was able to go from non-existent to, for what I like to think, flourishing, even in something as an actor for self-tapes. How many self-tapes? Because that's the new world that we live in now. We're going to live online. We're going to do everything virtual. I just completed a regional Broadway show online. I just completed it. Wow. It was set pieces being shipped to me, costumes being shipped to me. I became, and talk about it, really appreciating what other people do on the other side of the artistic table, like our crew people, which I can say I've done before, but I was a technician, I was a DP, I was an editor. I had to learn how to do those things. And I really found out, yeah, you've been this strong Black woman all this time, but you really finding what you're made out of. And I was like, thank you, pandemic. And yes, I looked at the losses and I looked at the numbers and I looked at this person that we had in office. I looked at the election. I looked at George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and I looked at all of it and I allowed myself to feel it, because I too am an empath. And I too am a person that's passionate and care and wants to fight and was in the trenches and fight. But I used to negotiate with myself, like, is that okay? Were you doing too much? Is that stepping on someone's toes? Can you take that into the workplace? Can you take that into the classroom? Can you do this? And I'm a stand-up comedian. What can I say? What can I not say? Well, these are things that's going to help feed my soul. So I'm not going to censor this anymore. I'm not going to put any type of kibosh on my life, because that's all I've been doing. So the thing that walked away from me, the reflection, was, let's go back to that little girl that brought, and everything that brought you joy in the first place in this pandemic. And I would actually have to thank the pandemic for allowing me to take a hard look, I mean, a real hard look at myself without any censorship, because everything that brought me joy, I was beginning to step away from. I gave myself dance parties just because during the pandemic. I too was celebrating within the Heights, And I was like, oh my gosh, my Afro-Cuban and Latina ex-people, yes.
Yes.
I was just celebrating. I saw all of the flags and I was like, yes, because I have had the beautiful pleasure of being in the presence of all of these people from Dominica to Cuba to Mexico. I was like celebrating just being me and stop apologizing and negotiating while I'm living with this thing called depression. So that was my reflection.
Yes.
That was my gift. And I said, and yes, if there was something from another white person asked me to tell them I don't want to tell you how to do anything else. Google it. I don't know what you want me to do for you. But even if I've been friends with you for 20 plus years, I don't want to talk to you. I still got to teach you how to fix this situation that me and my people been going through for 400 years. Pick up a doggone Wikipedia. I don't know what to tell you because I cannot anymore. So that's what I learned, to stop apologizing. I am walking these virtual rooms with so much confidence. If I don't book this job, so be it. Let the chips fall where they mouth. You're talking to a woman that's been half her life that gets no ever 5 minutes ago. I'm constantly getting rejected because how dare I, darn near at the age of 50 in November, you have the audacity to still take on the craziest industry, I like to think, called entertainment. But thank God for clinical professionals who step away and provide us affirmations, tools, languages, and information. I took on the 21-day meditation. It made a difference. I was literally getting up and looking forward to hear that in my voice, because that's too how I started my day. So I reimagined me. And that was the gift. That's the reflection. And I said no more of this apologizing, this negotiating, and seeing if I'm being okay for you. Whether you're Black, white, straight, gay, I have to know that I'm more than enough. And whether you know, because I don't have the word depressed at work tattooed on my forehead, you don't know that unless I share. But I know that. I know the trauma that I had as a child, but that's not who I am. That's not my story. That happened. I don't ignore it. I own it. But that's not who I am.
Yes.
Who I am is a pretty awesome human being. And I pretty let you know who I am, but I gotta show up and show you.
Yes.
And give myself permission to do that. So
Mika, you gonna have me pull out a tambourine, girl. We about to go to church.
Listen, Sherry was saying between you and Kay, we're gonna have to pass a plate.
Yes.
Listen.
Reverend Charles already started it. He took us. I was like, this is a sermon. But it's Sunday, amen. So I said, yeah, let the church say amen. So I was like, yeah, because I love you, Melissa, and I love, I'm head over heels in love with you. And
I love you know it.
I love her, and I love this. And to talk about this thing of wellness, this is us fighting to save our lives, and it is through creativity. If it is serving people to save, especially in our Black and brown communities.
Yes.
But especially because how dare you, when you are getting up from sun up to sundown and going in, you catching the bus, you working too. My grandmother was a maid. She had a 3rd grade education. I fall on those shoulders and proudly. But if I don't take ownership for her story and her trauma and understand who she comes, where she comes from, just like other people in this world, our like you said at the beginning, Lisa, our brown people from immigrants that come to this country, we have to understand that at the end of the day, this is all about how you want to be as a human being. Period, in my opinion. But the pandemic allowed me to reflect and understand that about myself, even while I live with depression.
Hey, Melissa, can I say something?
Yes.
Try to interrupt.
No, please do it.
Those 2 stories. First of all, I said, right, when she said functioning depression, I could totally relate. And there was a time I was really depressed in my life. But the other side of that is, and I came from really dire circumstances. I grew up in the South Bronx, family of 11, on welfare, really poor. So I also have 4 Grammys that I've won right here to my left. So I'm a high achieving person, and I deal with a lot of high achieving people.
Mhm.
So it's a beautiful thing to see, the dynamic of both the opposite things that could be part of our life still, and still
Yes.
be high achieving and still be kick ass. So you know
Yes.
what? You don't mistake me. I am kick ass.
Yes.
So and I have no problem with telling people, because you do have to tell people, you have to remind them, and you have to hit them over the head with it sometimes. They have no freaking clue.
Mhm.
So God bless you, Tamika. You're on the right track. That's a beautiful thing.
Thank you for those words, Oscar. I think it's so precious to hear over and over again that this pandemic is helping us recognize our unique gifts, that we're not here by accident, and to be unapologetic about it. With all the healing that needs to happen and that the pandemic is making more visible, the individual healing, the community healing, the national healing, this hopefully is shaking us up into recognizing that we must amplify our gifts. And that involves being unapologetic, like you were saying, Tamika. And like you were saying, Oscar, kick ass, just do it. Just do it. We need to be here fully, but to do it, healing needs to happen. Healing needs to happen, and it includes going deeply into our history of trauma, of pain, of moving from one generation to the next. Pastor Saul's during the chat was talking about, frozen pain and functional depression. Yes, Makisha, you said it beautifully. Yes, it is. Through the lens of trauma, it is. And for oppressed communities that have not received attention for all the pain that's happened for centuries, yes, that is functional depression. We are frozen in time, in our bodies even. So we need to go deeply into this healing so that we can amplify our gifts.
Yeah.
I think the pandemic is inviting a shift, huge shifts in every kind of context we can think of, and these shifts don't happen smoothly, but they're necessary. Tamika, when you said thank you to the pandemic, I was just so heartened by it, because gifts don't all come in delightful packages. The pandemic was not delightful. Oh, but we needed it.
Yeah.
We needed it.
Mm-hmm.
We needed it. And exhaustion. I mean, talk about burnout. We know burnout. And the oppressed communities are not the only ones that need to heal. So are the people that are part of generations of oppressing others. Oppressing is not accidental. Just like us, oppressed communities have inherited stories of how to be in the world, so have people who have been in the oppressing community. We all need to go deeply into our histories, all of us.
Yeah.
All of us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Melissa, Tamika talked about, I started it. Well, they took it to a whole nother level, I tell you that. And that's for me, that's the beauty of catalytic leadership. So, but I wanted just to share a couple of thoughts. One, when Tamika said, thank you for the pandemic. I mean, I always say that, do not ignore your pain, because pain, is a path to new possibility. Pain is a path to new discovery. And so when we ignore our pain, we don't get to discover more about ourselves, more about our circumstances,
Right.
and more about where we need to be going and can go. So I think that's very, very important, for us. I shared a little bit about, spirituality and religion. And as a pastor and a person of faith, I'm grateful for the role of the Black church, but I'm also aware of the destruction and the pain that the Black church has caused, and in so many ways continue to cause, especially in the area of sexism, in the area of homophobia, and in the area of xenophobia. So I think we need to just be aware, of that there is the reality of the Black church, then there is the aspiration of the Black church. I think as somebody mentioned in terms of how we have to look at, the United States, but in so many ways, religion has been built on what I call the industry of guilt. You see, spirituality invites us into a deep and vital relationship with our Creator. So being angry with God is for me is a healthy expression, of how we continue to deepen our relationship with God and with our Creator. So this whole illusion, of you can be angry at God is just a fallacy, because if you look at the Bible, which is one of many sacred texts, you will find a lot of people were angry at God, you see, and question God and all of that. I liken it to, when I would be angry with my parents, but I never stopped loving them. When I would disagree with them, I didn't start hating them. When I would engage them around a disagreement, you see, it just deepened our relationship. And I think that's how it is, with the divine. That's what spirituality, can do for us. And so I do think that there's a difference between Black church and Black spirituality. Black spirituality goes much deeper, and invites us to even deep reflections in such a way that we actually don't have a problem even, criticizing the reality of what the Black church is, but we invite the Black church into its aspirational, vision of where we need to be going. And so that's what I celebrate, just about, the transformation, the evolution, of what spirituality, especially Black spirituality, can be about. And it doesn't have so much to do with linguistics, right? But everything has to do with how we are able to connect with each other spiritually and not just linguistically. So I can be in Haiti where they worship in Creole, right? It's linguistically, foreign to me, but spiritually, I'm able to connect with how them folk are moving and singing and whatever. And I'm speaking out of experience now. I've been to Haiti, several times. And I think that's what we need to invite people in around, what this is all about. And that's why I do believe that, out of all, you see the experiences we have on the liturgical, Protestant calendar, Christmas, as well as, Easter. For me, Epiphany and Pentecost are probably the most powerful ones, you see, because Pentecost really was saying to us that the Holy Spirit has the ability to break through any and all barriers, you see, and democratize our access to the divine in ways that we've never, seen before. So I want to invite us, I think, into that Pentecostal way of living, our faith, which is, which always calls us, deeply into our humanness, yet beyond our humanness to be able to connect with the divine with authenticity, and with vitality.
Thank you for sharing this, Pastor Sauls, because it really invites reflection about how in all areas we stand to grow. For people who are very connected to a sense of spirituality and they're connected to a religious community, who says that those are not spaces where growth can happen, transformation can happen, becoming more aware of the different ways in which different cultures live that experience, and that it can be a part of the healing process. Yes. I would like to invite you, Jake, to join this reflection by sharing some things that not only you said during the episode we had together about burnout, but because you work in an environment that's all about social services, and the people that are providing the social services are also in need of their own healing. People are exhausted. And as a leader, you have been so involved in the wellness of the people that you work with. Please share a little bit about that.
Well, thank you again for having me. And I really want to say how much I appreciate hearing all of the different perspectives in terms of, how each one of the individuals have expressed how they've been dealing with this pandemic and how it's affected them individually. So with regard to my situation at work, what I can say is that I have a renewed appreciation for the things that are espoused by the county that's kind of written into policy. First and foremost, the notion of tolerance, because our workforce is so diverse, and there are so many different cultures. And I can even see that, in my office, where I'm the district director, and I have, various ethnicities who bring their different thoughts on how things should be. With that, I've learned that while some people may appreciate science and the need to get vaccine, some people have their thoughts on why they shouldn't get vaccinated, and the thoughts vary. And while I may be a proponent of getting vaccinated, I have to truly appreciate why other individuals have their reasons for not getting vaccinated. And that even extends beyond work. I've noticed that my friends and family members have different perspectives on what's going on. And while I consider myself someone who's open, I guess that even though I've had this notion of wanting to be open and self-professing that I'm open, I would still cling on to those old ways that I've had just by, my influences or my predispositions to certain things like music. So I have my preferences and maybe my biases. But I think that in reflecting on what's been happening, I've been able to see how I've grown. You mentioned growth. I think that I've grown, and now I'm becoming more tolerant, or I'm listening more, and I'm maturing just in allowing myself to hear different perspectives and to not be so judgmental. So I think that's a good thing. I'm 60 years old, and I'm still growing, I'm still learning. And I think someone mentioned the word hopeful. It's kind of hard for me to be hopeful when I see so many things happening today that I thought I'd never see in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the old axiom, those who don't remember the past are doomed to repeat it. You know, that has that has a whole new meaning for me, because while I would hear it in the past, now I really do kind of look at how the things that happened in the past are actually happening again. I visited the Museum of Tolerance many years ago, and I remember seeing a video, a short clip on how propaganda was used in World War II or in Germany to dehumanize the Jewish people. And when I saw that being shown in a way how, you know, they became caricatures, and then ultimately they literally showed rodents. And I said, that could never, as a species, we're too smart, we're evolving, that could never ever happen again. We're just too smart. We're becoming too sophisticated and intelligent through our just natural, you know, evolution. And today to see some of the de-evolution happening and the terrible things that are going on. And Mr. Sawes, I know you kind of alluded to some of the racism and some of the terrible things that are going on. And I know from a biblical perspective, you know, there are things like, you know, teachings about wars and rumors of wars and all of these tragic things happening throughout you know, the existence of humanity. But I don't know, should I take a pessimistic approach? Should I take an optimistic approach? I'm somewhat confused. I consider myself a gregarious person. I like seeing social interactions, but then I'm a self-professed shy person. I don't usually talk a lot. I just kind of like doing things in the background. For example, since working for the county, I probably volunteered to put on so many different events. Dancing, I love dancing. So I've put on like 15 different dance events. And I do that. Yeah, I do that, but I'm not the most social person. I'm gregarious, but I'm not interacting with people during the event. But I just like doing that just to see people laughing and smiling and getting together. And so what this pandemic has done for me is it's affected me in ways where I realized that I'm not able to do that. And I think it's probably had somewhat of a deleterious effect on me. While this format is wonderful, I especially think it's wonderful today because it's kind of, like you said, therapeutic. I prefer, you know, being out with people and seeing people have a good time.
Yes.
And so, you know, I'll continue to grow. I'm going to take this I'm going to look at this as a way of continuing to allow the introspection to happen. And hopefully that will build on my growth. But anyways, I just want to thank you, Dr. Shepherd Williams, for allowing me to participate in this. And I want to thank you all for the perspectives that you share, because it's certainly adding to my growth. Thank you.
I'm so thankful you've been here, and I really appreciate that you have found this pandemic experience as an opportunity to support your team in the way that you do. You know, you're talking about dancing, but you know, I know, and the people who know and love you are aware of the lengths you go to support the team that you work with, so that they are well and so that they can serve better. And that's precious. And I thank you for that. I thank you for that. Speaking about music and healing, Dairen Santa Maria, you have been unstoppable in this pandemic. provide music that we so desperately needed to soothe our soul. What are your thoughts?
Thank you so much, Melly. Thank you. Thank you. It's always a pleasure being here with you. For me, I've been to realize again how delicate life is. Even though we know it, we all know that, experiencing that realization at such large scales was overwhelming and very scary at first. Because there were crazy times before the pandemic, very crazy times before the pandemic, and only got worse with the pandemic to then get better right now. And we cannot give up. We need to keep working hard because things need to get completely better, not just a little bit better, but completely better. We need that. We need that healing. And we all can do something about it. Each one of us can do something about that. So it's important to stay connected and to enjoy more things in group, and like worried about our friends, about our family, about people that we care about. It's good to do that, and because our society always pushes us a little bit to think just about ourselves, and that's what have gotten us all this way, all these crazy times. But I have discovered that I am more than grateful for the things that I have, and also for the things that I lack, for the things that I long for, because those things, in one way or another, have helped me to stay in touch with my roots and with my dreams. I feel inspired and with plenty of strength to fulfill my dreams and to reach my goals. These times have been full of ups and downs and ups and down again. And it has been very hard and difficult. And therefore, this is the best time for each one of us to give our best to reach the things that we have always wanted and we can get. I think this is the perfect time. There are so many people that I know that are doing things that they have never done before. They have always wanted to do. They're going back to school. They're learning new things. This is a great time for doing that, because we have experiencing, I want to say, the worst. I know that many other things have happened in history that have been catastrophic, but it has been really hard, and that's what I wanted to share. So I think it's a good time for us to keep striving for fulfill our desires and our dreams.
It's so special to hear you talk about the importance of giving attention to our dreams and being supported by our ancestors in the process. That we can go beyond surviving. Yes. Yes. Thank you for those words, Dating. I would love to hear your reflections, Ebony, as a fellow clinician, and also because of things you've shared about the power of the arts in this healing process, which I know you are really engaged with in your practice. What are your thoughts?
Well, just echoing all the gratitude that folks have for being invited. I am also very grateful. I love being in this space and hearing what everyone has to share. And I've been writing down all the wisdoms that have been shared here today. So thank you. When I think about this past year, I've been really mulling over and really connecting with my ancestors, and really thinking about the resilience that they had, the ability to on my mother's side, my ancestors were enslaved in Barbados, right? And then they immigrated to Guyana in South America, and then they came to the US and Canada, and you know, on my father's side, my ancestors were enslaved in America. And I really think about the ability of them to dream and hope and envision so that I can exist in whatever way that came about. Like, I'm here. And so I had a child almost 2 years ago, and one of my big goals, which is huge, I don't know if I'm going to make it, but I'm working towards it, is for her never to experience big T trauma. And so when COVID happened, I was like, okay, how do I call up the strength of my ancestors to protect her from what may occur? First, the loss of her potentially, because we didn't know, folks didn't know what was going on, and just protect her mental state. I am an interdisciplinary artist and therapist, and so I called on my training, and you know, we started painting. And that was, some weeks we painted every day, some weeks we painted twice a week. And then, you know, as I've talked about in the other podcast, you know, not being able to go outside for a month when the fires happened because we were so close and the air quality was not good. And so how do you then, you know, when you can't go on a walk, when you can't engage with nature, what do you do to keep the mind of this next generation well? Right. And for folks who are working with kids, who the kids are not necessarily showing up to the therapy sessions because it's different. It's maybe not as engaging as being right in front of somebody. And so I really started to think about first, you know, my child, and how do I infuse art within her so that she has a sense of how to express herself, how to deal with trauma that may come up in her life, how to build that resilience, how to breathe. You know, so we did a lot of that, but then also I started to really think about how do I want to leave this world, right? There may be there is a lot happening, but there's a lot then that is required of me. And I tend to think of many people in the world to consider the world we want to create. Kind of like this idea of dreaming that you were talking about. And I really appreciate that, because in the midst of this and so much anxiety that I had about leaving my house, just being a Black person, leaving my house, you know, with a child, right? Am I going to get stopped at some point? And then what would happen to my child? Leaving my home in the midst of air quality. Like, there's so many things that I thought about in addition to COVID, that I had such high anxiety that I really had to figure out not just how do I navigate this myself, but how do I not allow my child to catch that? Because so many children are catching all of that anxiety and stress. But also, how do I create spaces where folks can navigate these things that will continue to come up and affect their lives, but how do we deal with healing? And so that's a lot of what, you know, I thought about during this time, and how I experienced this past year, leaving me with more of action, right? How do we get into our bodies? What's my responsibility in creating those spaces and doing that work? And then but me specifically, think about healing as culturally relevant, because folks of color, or Black folks very much so, but across the board, Brown and Black folks are struggling with mental health for many reasons. And is there a way for them to get in that feels right for them, right? So that's kind of my meditation over this time, and movement to action has been really what I've been sitting with, and figuring out ways to make that happen.
Thank you so much for those words, Ebony. I would like us to go deeply into that in a closing reflection. And first, I invite Oscar to join us as we're moving towards the end of this chat. I know, Oscar, you have another commitment, so please jump in.
Well, I mean, Ebony, that was beautiful. Thank you for that. And it's so beautiful to hear all the different perspectives. I thank everybody for your own unique perspective and for what you brought to the table today, certainly what you bring to the table in your own lives and your own communities. It's all about community. And I could only, it's funny because I'm a white, green-eyed Puerto Rican from the South Bronx. Y yo hablo español.
Eso.
But I could only imagine what it is to be black. What that adds to, the playing field. Now, I grew up with the same sensibilities because, like I said, I grew up in the South Bronx. I have many black friends, but I'm not black. But I could only imagine how is it, your life out there. It's definitely an incredible perspective. I would say, and I tell people, you don't know me, don't let the last name fool you. But I could certainly identify with everything that's been said, from my own experience in my own life. And I thank you for letting me be part of this group. And Melissa, gracias, mi amor.
Gracias.
La
Ah.
So, and hopefully we'll get to, now that the pandemic's over, you, Brad, and I, and Sandra and the family can get together again. But
yes.
I'm going to go because I have another commitment. But thank you, guys. God bless you.
Thank you.
And I
Thank
wish
you,
all
Oscar.
the best, in your whatever endeavors you may have. All right?
Thank
Gracias.
you, Oscar.
Thank you.
Thank you. Love you so much. I am so heartened. My heart is full. Listening to all of you, not only today, but throughout this year that we've experienced together, while it's been on screen, I have to admit it's definitely been part of my own healing. In this crisis we've experienced collectively and also individually. I am so thankful for everything that's been shared here. Ebony, I would love to say thank you for what you shared in your life as a parent who happens to be a therapist and artist. The gift that you are sharing with your child to build not only resilience, but the material for thriving. Considering that in this culturally informed experience of healing, we need to remember that our ancestors had enormous strength, and because of them, we're here. Still, there is so much to be addressed, so much healing to be done that accounts for the functioning depression, the frozen pain, what Dr. Joy DeGruy calls post-traumatic slave syndrome, which we went deeply into this year, as well as the pain of allies who are trying to figure out how wrong narratives were passed down from one generation to the next in their own community. We all need healing, all of us. And hopefully, with all the things that this pandemic is inviting us even now to look at, we go more deeply into ourselves to find that material we have inherited from our ancestors that keeps us standing here now, and to move forward with greater connection to each other, and that we support each other in this healing process, because learning about our history is painful. whether we're talking about it from the political point of view or any other point of view, since last year we talked so much about politics. It is painful to learn about the history. It's painful to learn about all that has made this situation problematic. And so let's be there for each other still in every way we can think of to move forward in community. I thank you so much, all of you, for the time that you have shared with us, to be willing to speak publicly about your private reflections in support of the community that's listening to us. I don't believe in accidents. And while this podcast was born from a need to figure out a way to be there for each other and think out loud together, I guess it needed to happen. I didn't plan it, and well, it happened. And I look forward to what more we can discover together. You're all a blessing. Thankful for all of you.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate all of this. Because of this experience, it's been affirmed to me that life is not a sojourn, but a co-journey. So thank you for your ongoing companionship and partnership as we seek to be the healing that we are seeking. So thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Abrazos.
Yeah.
Abrazos. Blessings.
Yes,
Let's keep transforming the world through reflections.